Hello, Pearl Jam community. Today, I have the great pleasure of interviewing author, designer, filmmaker, and blogger, Jason Leung. In 2010, Jason published a book titled This All-Encompassing Trip, Chasing Pearl Jam Around the World. This book chronicles Jason's quest to follow Pearl Jam in 2005 across Canada. His journey then continued across America and all over Europe and around Australia during the entire 2006 Pearl Jam tour. I'm so excited to talk to Jason today about this book because I feel that this book is the perfect read, even if you've already read it before, to start this new tour and to get us excited about what's coming up. So, Jason, thanks so much for being with us today and for talking to me tonight.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about my old adventures.
So tell us, and those of you who have read the book, you probably, understand a little bit about how Jason was inspired to start this journey. But I'd love for you to tell those who haven't read this yet, how did this all come to be? How did you decide that you were going to do this? How did you book those tickets, which could not have been cheap for an entire tour? Or more than an entire tour. So how did it all start?
So I'm always been quite an adventurous type of guy. So driving across the country, I'm from Canada. So driving across Canada has always been a dream of mine. And when those dates came up from Pearl Jam about a cross-country West Coast to East Coast tour, that's not really unheard of for a big American band coming to Canada. So I thought that was the perfect way for me to drive across, do a nice little road trip, and meet some friends, new friends, and just catch Pearl Jam on as many shows as I could. And back then, the tickets weren't that expensive, so, we could afford to buy all the tickets at once.
So tell us about the van. How did you decide that you're going to take this old van and travel with people across Canada?
So it started up in the old Pearl Jam message pit. So we were trying to find a few other people that wanted to do the same thing, and lucky enough, there was two other guys in Vancouver that weren't far from where I lived that were also interested in doing this. So we had a couple of meetings in person, and from the meetings, we figured we would either take a bus or maybe take a train, but those weren't really logistically possible when in Canada. So we thought the best way was to maybe share rides, and a van was the best option for a vehicle. So we just started posting on the old message pit, seeing if other people were doing different legs of the trip. And through that, within a couple of weeks, we found like a little, I guess, an organized trip of a rotating cast of people joining our ride as well.
And I love how you decided to do the check marks on the side of the van as you went along and saw each show, and how people participated in checking up, and you used hockey tape, right? Because you're a hockey player.
Yeah, I mean, that's the very Canadian part of the van. And I mean, we didn't actually think about that idea. It was the very first show at the Gorge when our friend Brad, who's actually part of Wishlist at one point, and he thought of the idea as we put little yield signs next to the cities that mapped out throughout the van. And he said, oh, it'd be a great idea if you just put a check mark next to it after every show. So we kind of made a big deal out of it, and pick someone to do a little ceremony after every show to check off the city.
I love that. Yeah. And I remember seeing your van along the way. So it's so much fun to connect this story with probably some of us who saw your van or met you all. And that was the other thing too, is that if you interacted with people and had a conversation with people in 2005, 2006, they might just be in this book, right?
Yeah, I mean, we met a lot of people along the way, and most of them were quite memorable. So I kept note of everything, and that was a way to keep them track. And I made sure to make a note of it in the book.
That's great. So that leads me into, how did you keep track of all these thoughts? You kept a journal, correct?
Yeah, so I mean, it was more of a video journal to start with, because I brought a video camera along for the trip, and just kind of filming the adventure, filming people that we meet, and doing some interviews of fans, and kind of finding out more about other Pearl Jam fans. So from that, I got a good visual memory or visual record of stuff after the tour. And after each of the legs, I guess, I would write things down in a journal by pen. And over time, I accumulated a lot of little notes and stories and stuff like that. And I figured like that would be good in the book format. And I just had so much material and so much things to draw from. So that was quite easy at that point.
It's such a great idea because so many of us, at least I know I was thinking through this whole thing, oh my gosh, I have so many stories I could tell, but I don't remember every little detail. But it's such a great idea to journal.
And this was before social media and all that. So like you can just post your journey online or anything. So we took photos, of course, as well. And we're just like after the fact, we would go through them.
That's so cool. So I know you've met so many people along the way and there were so many interesting characters. But if you had to think right now, who do you think is the most memorable person that you met?
I mean, yes, there are so many, but like the one guy that kept popping up throughout the entire journey was Leafy Joe. And he's the guy that kind of hitchhiked throughout the whole Canadian tour and kept seeing him in every single show. And we finally saw him on the side of the road after the Winnipeg show. And we just had to pick him up. And we saw him again. The next show, we picked him up again. So he just became a staple in the van. And then he came along for the ride in the US and he followed me to Australia as well. So to this day, he's one of my best friends. We keep in touch. And he has a lot of stories and he knows how to, he has a lot of good insight for everything too. And he's a big project fan.
That's great. It is amazing how the people that you meet along this journey become some of your greatest friends. It's really amazing.
Yeah, like some of the friends from Vancouver, we joined our own hockey team afterwards. So we just continued on and not just the shows, and we were hanging out outside of program shows as well.
You're awesome. Now, what about your most memorable moment? That's your most memorable person along the way, but memorable moment, memorable show. You had so many things that you wrote about, but again, if you had to pick right now.
I mean, we ran out of the gas in the prairies one time after a show, and then we got a flat tire right after that. So that was memorable. It wasn't a great memory, but it was fun. It was a good experience. And then, I mean, all the shows have a different memory of their own. The very first show at the Gorge was very special because that was something that was leading up to the tour as a warm-up show, and they just played a lot of rarities and stuff that we never heard of. And even the two Gorge shows at the end of the US tour were very, very memorable. The camping and everything, and the hot heat. I mean, I would say the tours itself as a whole were the big highlights of each of these shows. This is the whole tours.
Yeah. And you actually took the time to make a sign to tell Eddie when you had run out of gas and had a flat tire, and that whole story about, holding up the sign and he couldn't quite read it, but then he finally got close enough to read what all you had gone through. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, that was actually. I think that was at the very last show. We took some photos and we developed them at the photo lab there, and we wrote a little note on one of the backs of photos and handed to one of the security people, and they gave it to the band for us. And they had some comment at the show, and it made us smile for sure.
Careful. Now, tell me about the exhaustion. Reading this made me think of the movie Almost Famous. Like, not that you were like roofied or banding weeds or whatever they call them in the movie, but right. it seems so exhausting. So did you ever think, and I know that you wrote about this, but did you ever think that you were not going to make it through this? Like, I know you've got sick and you were tired and all that. Was there ever a moment when you're like, I don't know if I can do this?
Well, I don't know if there was a point where we couldn't think we would do it, but at the beginning, because Canada was so large, at the beginning, the first few shows, there was a lot of driving involved, and they were, I'd say, 9-10 hours in between shows. and some of them back to back too. So at the beginning, it was tough to get adjusted, and you had to make it to the shows on relatively on time. And there was a few of us driving at the beginning. The van wasn't full, so it was just like 3 or 4 of us driving, so you couldn't have that much rest. And we were sleeping in the van because to save cost. So to start up, it was hard to get used to. But once we got kind of the East Coast, and the shows are a little closer, and we can enjoy the cities more and see some of the sights. I think we at that point we knew we can get through it. And I mean, after that, you've already met so many people, and you see the same people, and the camaraderie is what kept us going near the end of it, and kept us going throughout the whole thing.
Yeah. And one of the things I loved about the book, for anybody who isn't a big reader, is just, the way that you kept it into those smaller chapters. And one of the things that you did was kind of pick a Pearl Jam lyric and put it underneath the chapter title. And it kind of gave us a teaser of what was to come. So I'm sure you weren't thinking about lyrics as you were thinking about each, kind of chapter of your journey, but is that something that you were really thinking about as you wrote the book?
Yeah, I mean, that's all after the fact for sure, and kind of like the theme of the chapter, and each chapter is divided up by the show or the city. So basically, whatever what song or what lyric related to that chapter the most was what came up with the lyric. And I don't think I repeated a song once throughout the book, so it kind of worked out that way too.
Oh, it was very well written. So here's the big question. If you could do this all over again, and I know that you are happily married and you have an adorable son and you have a great career, but if you were posed with the opportunity to travel for a Pearl Jam tour, would you do it again?
Without a doubt. We just need more shows to be announced, and more ticket prices to be maybe a little bit cheaper and more accessible, I guess. If that's all possible, then definitely sign me up tomorrow. And I mean, I have a little 5-year-old now. He wears a little camper van shirt all the time because he sees like my pictures and stuff all the time. He dreams about doing this road trip with Osley. So, next generation.
Bringing it along. Yeah, maybe you can get a more up-to-date van this time.
Oh, this one is still running quite well. It just hasn't been driven in a while.
Is it? Oh, that's great news. Oh, yay. Well, good. Well, I just wanted to reiterate to the community that if you have not already read this book, you have to read this book now. It will not only get you excited about this upcoming tour, but it will bring you back to your own personal adventures with the band and with connecting and reconnecting with old friends, meeting new friends. It's such a fun read. And again, if you've already read the book, I highly suggest reading it again now, because this is the perfect time to read it, because it personally made me more excited about the upcoming tour. So, Jason, where can we find this book? I know we have this all encompassing trip.com. It's your website, but you can also find this on Amazon. Is there anywhere else that we should go through?
It's basically on Amazon only right now. It's been a while since it's been released, so that's the main source. So if you search it on Amazon, you'll...
Great. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. And I'm really excited for people to revisit this book or read it for the first time. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me on.